New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Here on the New Thought Media Network. And so we're so glad you're here. I'm getting these banners straight. They won't cooperate. There we go. There we go. Good morning. Good morning. And it's good to see a couple of people already chiming in. Good morning, Shay. How are you? Life is good. And good morning to another user this morning. We're glad you're here. Today, I'm Reverend Z, and we're here to explore the power within. Now, this is the time during the lecture series where we've completed the annual going through the Science of Mind textbook, and we now begin to look at the archives of all of the work that has been created through Dr. Holmes and the whole organization. And so today, as we now move into this new way of expressing ourselves, this new way of looking at life and engaging life, the thing that we really, really want to get into is the power within. The power within, because it is that power within that allows us to really begin to not only know ourselves, but to know God as well. And so right now we want to take a step-by-step approach and move through and look at this power within and see how we can apply it to everyday situations to make ourselves one with the universe. And so we want to just also say, as everybody continue to jump in, we want to say good morning to Diego. How are you, sir? Glad you're here. And Garrett, we want to say hello to you as well. Good morning. Good morning. And we are now off and running. So the first question I'd like to pose, and remember, everyone, just before I start, remember that this is a conversation, right? And today we're focusing on the power within, and we want you to let us know you're there. Ask questions, be involved. This is a conversation, not a lecture. So it really is good when everyone can share their ideas and ask questions, because the purpose of this series is for each and every one of us to not only begin to engage with one another, but to understand this philosophy and begin to apply it in our lives every day. So the first thing I want to ask everyone, and chime in if you can, what is this power within you suspect that I'm talking about? What is this power within? Would be, just take a moment, and you can just put a one-word answer into the chat. What is this power within that I'm referring to? Okay, don't be shy. But I'll start with this. In the first issue of the Science of Mind textbook, in the Science of Mind magazine in 1927, Dr. Holmes stated, "I believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that I am surrounded by this creative mind, which receives my direct impress of my thoughts and act upon it." That receives my direct thoughts and acts upon it. And as we were looking at that first statement there, we got spark. That's what the power is, spark. We got consciousness, is that idea. And what Dr. Holmes is saying here in the very beginning of the magazine, when he started publishing to a broader audience, he said there's a universal mind, there's a power, there's a consciousness, there's a spark that is available for us to interact with, that's available for us to engage in, to turn that spark into a flame, and that it operates on a law, that there's laws of gravity, there's laws of aerodynamics, there's laws of electricity. And just like those laws, which we recognize and give honor to, this law that Dr. Holmes refers to, that is the law of mind, of God, is all around us. It's just like gravity. Gravity is all around us. No one denies gravity. No one climbs on buildings and jump off unless they're doing a stunt. No one gets in airplanes and jump out unless they're a paratrooper. So we understand that there are laws in the natural world, in the spiritual world, that are invisible. No one has ever seen electricity. We've seen the results of electricity. No one has seen gravity. We've seen the results of gravity. And just like those, Dr. Holmes is speaking here about this law that he says in this last statement here. We are surrounded by a creative mind which receives the direct impulse of our thoughts, and then it acts upon it. Just like gravity. If we get on a building and jump off, it will impress itself upon us. So when we begin to look at this power within, and we begin to look at how we engage life and how we begin to use these principles in a way that not only enriches our own lives, but enrich the lives of others. And that enrich the lives of others. Because here's a direct to that. It said, life expressed through one us from within. From within. You see, because there is a correspondence. You hear it in metaphysics, this law of correspondence. Which, if you're a math aficionado, you know math, you set up equations and you do the correspondent part of the equation so you can solve for whatever it is that the mathematical problem is looking to elucidate, if you will, to put light on, to give us a greater understanding. And so once we begin to understand this, that there is a law, that there is a actual way of communicating with the universe, with God itself, that it responds directly to our impulses, to our exchange of thought, ideas, visions, words, actions. Nothing is left out. Then we begin to understand that there's a power within us, because it's all around us. It's all around us. And so when that happens, we begin to look at life differently. Dr. Holmes says this: there is one infinite life acting through this law. And this law is mental. Law is mind in action. We are surrounded by an infinite, subconscious, impersonal, neutral, plastic, and ever-present thinking stuff from which all things come, and which in its original state permeates and penetrates all things. Now, again, we're looking deeper here because we want to understand that when we step out into the world to create, we're looking at a plastic world, if you will. I don't know how many of you played with Play-Doh when you were growing up, but you could take that Play-Doh and make it into all kinds of things. It's just a can of stuff that you can open up and begin to use your imagination, begin to use your visualization and create. And that's what God is asking us to do every day as we tap into this power that it was there before we were born, that was there before our parents were born. And so now with the science of mind philosophy, we are looking at how do we tap into that? How do we utilize that? So I'd ask this question. What are some of the things you think that are inherent that make you able to tap in? What kinds of things can you do? What kinds of activities can you get involved in to make yourself a recipient, although you're a recipient, whether you know it or not, or whether you believe it or not, the real part of it becomes how do you utilize it? How do you express it so that you are aware and that you use it for good? Any ideas? Any ideas? Any ideas? Because this is the crux of the matter. Dr. Holmes said, I'd rather you learn one principle, one law of this teaching and practice it than to recite the whole book by heart. Because it is the action that saves lives. You can know everything you know about CPR, but if someone is in a cardiac arrest and you're not doing the CPR, you're not going to save a life. And that's what these are life-saving teachings. These are teachings that allow us to first awaken our own selves and then awaken everyone else around us who are vibrating and who are looking to make a change. Change your thinking and change your life. Now, Shay says here, one way to do this is to clear out old emotional and thinking patterns that do not serve. Now, that's a monumental statement right there, because when we think about our current state of thinking, our current state of expressing emotions, a lot of it is tied to past experience. I had a thought, I did something, I did not like the results, so I've got emotionally attached one way or another to that thought pattern. And anything that feels like that can send me down a road, can send me down a track that may not be what's going on in this current moment. How often do you allow your emotions to just run away? Someone cuts you off in the car. And that's a prime example. Everybody use that because it happens to everybody, right? And so what do? Do you start honking the horn and calling the names, or do you acknowledge that you just got cut off? You frown your eye a little bit, but then you say, well, maybe he needs to be somewhere that I don't need to be as quickly, or maybe she saw something on the other side of the road and need to switch over. We don't know, right? But I do know that if I get myself in a tizzy, I begin to lose my power within. And as Shay said, old emotional patterns of when I felt someone had did me wrong, or when I felt someone had not given me my proper due, or someone did not respect me. Then I go off, right? But there's a power within that is plastic, right? There's this power. Let's not forget this, that there is a surrounding environment that is infinite, is subconscious, so it's always there. We just have to bring it up into reality. It's impersonal. You can use it, I can use it, they can use it, we can use it. It doesn't care who uses it. It just wants to be used. It's neutral and plastic and everywhere present. And here's the key. It's thinking stuff. It's smart stuff. It's smart stuff. We hear now about AI, smart stuff. If you haven't played around with Open Chat and Chat GPT and some of the other AI tools that are out there, if you really want to understand what this is talking about, get in there and just ask the question. Get in there and pose a situation and watch how the plastic stuff begins to mold, begins to create. Impersonal. It'll ask, if I ask the question, you ask the question, it'll still respond. And it will respond in kind to the words that we give it. We can say, where is the water? Or I would like to have some water. Now, very similar things, but you will get a different response by the way that you ask the question. It's a great experiment to understand how mind and God and spirit works by playing with this AI stuff, right? Now we know God is infinite, so it's more than AI. It includes AI, but on a physical level, on a gross level, if we want to begin to kind of have something to visualize what this means or how this works, this AI stuff with these chat bots is very good. Very good. Now Garrett says this. Garrett says, willing to acknowledge and accept the power from within to change one's thoughts. Practice, discipline to work from within and to be expressed through you. I like that because check this out. There's two words in there I think that sums up the whole conversation. Practice, discipline. Practice, discipline. Now think about your life. Think about anything that you do that you think you're good at. Doesn't matter. Washing dishes, lifting weights, making crafts. When you think about what it took for you to get there, this is a direct example of this power within and how we tap in, because that power of God is always present, right? And so the first thing you do, you had some visualization or some vision was pressed upon you. Let's say you were a track guy or a track girl that runs. You saw someone on TV or at an event and you were like, I like that. That's nice. I want to do that, right? So now you've had this image impressed upon this plastic stuff called mind, called consciousness. And then what did you do? If you took it serious, if the impression was a good impression, you started trying to do a little running. You set up neighborhood races. You try to outrun the dog, or you try to catch the rabbit, whatever it was. And then the more you practice, the better you got. But what goes hand in hand with practice is discipline. Because I have to be disciplined enough to do the practice. Now, that's a physical example. So now if we take that to a spiritual example, are you practicing prayer? Are you practicing meditation? Are you practicing contemplation? Because we know in the very beginning, when you start practicing anything, it's very rote, it's mechanical. But if we do it with earnest vision and earnest heart, we begin to realize, even though we might not want to get up in the morning and go run, we notice every morning that we do it, it gets a little easier. It's a little more natural. My body responds a little easier, even if it's a tough run. Now, that same rule applies when we're looking at mind, when we're looking at consciousness, when we're looking at how do we begin to utilize this power, this stuff that is everywhere present, that is everywhere present. Now, here's a quick side note question. What does it mean, everywhere present? What does that mean? And how do I tap into that? What is the process of tapping into this stuff that's everywhere present? Here's something that gives us an idea. By impressing our thoughts upon this substance, this stuff that's everywhere present, we called it to produce for us that which we think. It is to produce for us that which we think. Impressing our thoughts upon it, it is not an external act from which we impress our thoughts upon ourselves. We are thinking into it. This is because of the unity of all mind. This is because of the unity of all. So, see, there's only one thing happening here. There's only one thing present in the universe, and that's God, or that's spirit, or that's infinite wisdom, or that's total consciousness. We have all these different names that allow us to tap into it based on our upbringing, based on our culture, based on our way of looking at the world. You know, we have in the English language, we have these things called synonyms, right? So we don't like this word. No, well, not necessarily like this word, but if this word doesn't fit, we can go get a synonym and get the same thing going on. That's what we're talking about when this stuff is everywhere present. That it can be described by many names. It can be explored and explained in many different ways. But what we're talking about here is you have to get that base understanding. And then once you do it, you got to use it. I'm sure we've all heard, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it, right? And Shay says this, right? As within, so without, as above, so below. Holographic universal mind. Now that holographic point there, that's a key point. That's a key point, because if you understand holograms, if you take a holographic picture and you broke off a little chip off the end, the whole content of the total picture would be represented in that one part that you broke off. A substance that's everywhere present, no matter how small or how large it may be, it contains all the same stuff that the small or the large or the in-between has. Now that's saying something. That's saying something. And then when we begin to interact with it, right? When we begin to interact with it, so that creation moves from the invisible reality to visible form. Ideas come together and, like seeds, bring forth form with them. So ideas first, form second. So it works as us. Everything we think, say, and feel, consciously or unconsciously, is continually feeding and directing the creation of our lives. Now that's worth pondering right there. Because what it's saying is this, Ernest is saying this: no matter what you do, no matter what stand you take, whether it's a so-called good stand or a so-called bad stand, a positive or a negative, I'm for this or that, all of it begins to shape your life. All of it begins to shape your way of thinking. And because we live in a holographic universe, meaning all things are present at once, and any subpart of the whole represents everything, everything is always present. And so you have to choose moment by moment how you're going to live, how you're going to act. What words are you going to use? You know, there's that thing that says, well, when you get mad and you're having an argument with your partner or your friend or your boss, take a second or two before you speak. Be centered, because the moment you think it and then speak it and then act it, you're giving that thing more and more power in your life. And as Garrett said, it begins to become a practice discipline if you do it over and over again. And we know what happens then. It becomes a habit. And once it becomes a habit, habits are hard to dig up. They're like dandelion weeds. If you don't get that thing by the root, it's coming back. It'll go away for a little while. But if you don't get it by the root, it's coming back. And you're going to be wrestling with that same old pattern again. We talked about patterns before, thought patterns, behavioral patterns. These are the things that this power within gives us the opportunity to recognize and move out, and then begin to impress upon the spirit something different. Something different. Because we all want something that's better. Doesn't have to be more. You know, if you got a good car, nobody's going to say, I don't want a better car. Doesn't have to be an expensive one. You just want, the tires are better. The engine is better. The air conditioning is better. Everybody wants some air conditioning right now, right? All over. And so we begin to use this understanding of the spirit within, this power within, and then we can move forward. One thing we do, we begin to look at the science of mind symbol that says there's a process, this creative process of using this infinite stuff. There's spirit, soul, and body, or God, law, and form. There are many different ways, and depending on the system you are involved in, or you know about, or you've studied, these three can become five, right? Because we're talking about gross, subtle, causal, and ultimate reality when we look at how things are created. And so when we look at this spirit coming down, this symbol is so great. Next time I'm going to do something just on this symbol and how it shows the involution of spirit and then the evolution of that very matter that it involves into, how it begins to express back out. This whole process of involution and evolution is how we begin to recognize this power within and then utilize that power. The involution is that power, that knowledge, that consciousness of spirit coming in. The evolution of it is, once we understand the various aspects of it, we begin to utilize it and create and form a world that works for all. And when we say all, that means everything. See, that's the beauty of this involutionary process, because it goes all the way down to the gross level, whatever you want to imagine that to be, whether it's rocks or atoms, or however gross you want to get in terms of just physical, gross, material stuff. And then out of that came life. Think about this. There's a lot of conversation going on now about the coral reefs. because the waters are heating up. Now, a coral reef, if you're a scuba diver, or if you ever went snorkeling and you've seen a coral or certain types of coral anyway, it looks like a rock. It looks like a rock formation. But in fact, it is a living thing. It is a living organism that serves infinite purpose in the sea. And so we look at how this involutionary process works from spirit to soul to body, and then we begin to come back up so we can consciously connect. And now we really have that power within. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that. And when that happens, we can tap into the power. We can become the true hero or shero of our own lives. And that's what God has intended for us to do, to be the heroes and sheroes in our own lives. And so as we get close to wrapping up, and if you have any questions or comments, I'll pause for a second. And if not, we'll move on to these last couple of points here. And we will begin to do these things in our lives. That's the ultimate part of this, is to get this information, to digest it, to ponder it, and then figure out how do we put it in our lives. Now, this next idea is one that I think is paramount. And I can say that about all these points, but here it says spiritual power responds by corresponding or responding with or alongside rather than on behalf or from out yonder. Now, what does that mean? That means that this is not something that's outside of ourselves. This is not something that we have to coerce or anything like. It's already here. It's already present. It's already one with us. So all we have to do is activate and use it. It says the thing itself within us works as a process of unfolding. That's that evolutionary process we're talking about. Such as when we set out to learn a new skill. Right away, we can picture ourselves doing a new thing. But in order to actually do it, play the guitar, paint, a series of steps is gradually, incrementally taken as we master the fretboard on the piano, on the guitar, or the paintbrush. Another way of putting this is that when we involve ourselves with an idea in order to then evolve that idea into a tangible form. Now, that is where we need to be focusing. So if there's something we want to do, if there's a difference you want to make, this is the process. This is that process that we just saw with the science of mind. The question is, as Garrett said, are we going to practice it? Are we going to be disciplined enough to do it for the long haul, to practice the fretboard, to practice the strokes of the brush, to understand how to get a fine line or a thin line with only one brush? And you look at it and you say, God, they had one brush and they got all these different images or contour lines. By using this power within, which is connected to the greater power of God that is everywhere present, that is plastic, intelligent stuff in terms of a visualization. So now we're at a point now in this conversation series that we're well on our way. If we take these little 6 or 7 points that we talked about and begin to practice. Garrett says this: change the programming to change and eliminate unwanted thoughts and strengthen the subconscious mind. That's what that was just talking about. That's this idea right here. Spiritual power responds by corresponding or responding. See, what's in our subconscious mind, the way it pops up is it has a correspondent to something outside, some event, some vision, some word, some thought. And there's a corresponding idea in the subconscious that pops up. And so when we begin to change the way we think, when we begin to change the way we look at the world, when we begin to be curious about life, this power within will awaken. It's like the sleeping giant. It's just there waiting for you to awaken. So as we get ready to close, I want to bring this now. This article that I'm bringing up, or this statement I'm bringing up now, was in the August 1956 Science of Mind magazine. The 1956 Science of Mind magazine. And it talks about becoming a channel for good, which is what we're looking to use this power for. It says a channel is that through which anything passes. We speak of man being a channel for good. We mean that good passes through him. The divine urge of life must be expressed. And as it pushes out into expression through man's life, man becomes the channel for the outflowing of divine wisdom, a channel for all that God is. That's in the Science of Mind textbook, page 528. Now just ponder that idea of you being a channel of this power. And then he goes on to say, maybe a river cannot help the debris that gets into it, but man certainly can keep from clogging his mind with that which is unnecessary and unwholesome. Every affirmative thought widens our channel for good, and every negative thought tends to restrict it. Not only do our good thoughts and desires permit the free flowing of God's nature through us, but they actually increase our capacity. Everyone is a channel. Life has to express in and through us, but always at the level of our accepting it. When we live from our divine center, when we take our impulses from the divine urge within, we may be certain that wisdom moves us into activities that are good for us and of equal help to others. That sums it up. We are here to be channels of the divine. We're here to be conduits. Just like the plug in your wall, it's a conduit to extract the electricity that's ever present to turn on this computer, to cut on the light, to turn on the music. It becomes a channel. And that's what we're all looking to do, to be channels of the divine, to be God's power on earth. And so when this happens, when we understand this, we understand that there is a power greater than we are. And everything that is visible is hits to it. An invisible pattern, a divine pattern. All things comes forth from it, and all things return to it. And we are in it, and it responds directly to us personally on the level of our conviction that it is responding. So there it is. That's how we tap this. We get an understanding of this power within. We tap into this power within. We understand, as Shay said, it's a holographic universal mind that is everywhere present. All parts are like the whole. Like Gary said, we have to have some discipline to practice this presence. And when we do, we begin to change our habits. We begin to change our way of thinking. the way of talking, the way we view the world. And we've heard this before, and sometimes sound cliches, but these things that happen that the world recalls from, as horrible as they may be, the person who's on a personal understanding of this power within, they acknowledge that yes, that was not a wholesome thing to do, but immediately they don't dwell on that. They begin to think of a creative thought that could change it, a creative idea that could make it a better situation. See, we're not in the business of denial. We sometimes we have now this thing called toxic positivity, where you can't acknowledge something that's not pleasing, or that's not helpful, or that's not in the best of light, if you will. But we just acknowledge it, and then we begin to say, what's next? How do we improve it? I'm not going to condemn the person. I'm going to look to the power within me and begin to look at this invisible stuff and figure out what imprint can I put on it that will have an effect on that thing, or on that person, or on that situation. When we can do that, we are in touch with the divine, and we have truly become channels of infinite wisdom and knowledge. And so I'll stop right there. And if there's any questions or comments as we prepare to close out, please bring them forward. And I want to invite everyone to come back again next Saturday for this conversation. Invite a friend so that we can begin to spread this power around to our friends, to our families, to our partners, so that we can wake the sleeping giant within. So I thank everyone for being here. I want to take a moment right here, right now, to just give thanks to our sponsors for the New Thought Media Network. You can watch on Sundays. We have services from all across the country, but things that continue to permeate our minds and activate this power within, so that we can awaken. And so with that, I'll bid you farewell. We're going to give a quick shout out here to some of our sponsors, and I'll see you next time. Peace and blessings.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you.